Well, hello and welcome. My name is Reed Summers, and it's my pleasure to host the next in our bi-weekly series of live streams of a new revelation from the Creator of all life. Tonight we're going to be listening to a revelation titled The Battleground, which is very pertinent and poignant given what's happening right now in Ukraine and Eastern Europe. And I hope that today's message provides some clarity and some impetus as well to know what this conflict really means and what we need to do in light of it, what this means for us going forward individually and as a world. As I said, my name is Reed Summers, and I'm the son of Marshall Vian Summers, who has for over 40 years now been in the process of receiving what is called the New Message from God, a series of divine revelations revealed through him from an angelic presence, spoken, recorded, and now transcribed in the many books and teachings of the New Message, which are available online for you to read. And one of those many hundreds of angelic encounters we will be listening to tonight. The New Message is, as I said, a communication from the Creator of all life, and it is a gift for people all around the world, people of any religion and of no religion. It is, in essence, a communication from the heart of the Creator to each of us now in the world, with a message regarding what we're facing here on earth and how we need to individually prepare ourselves to participate in the unfolding journey of humanity as we step out into a larger universe of intelligent life. The New Message from God is vast. It's over 9,000 pages in length, and I encourage you to, after tonight's broadcast, take a moment, go to the New Message website, and see what speaks to you. There's hundreds and hundreds of individual revelations there, speaking on nearly every aspect of our life and of the world. So there's a lot there for you. And I really do feel the New Message can help us now understand these very difficult events taking place in our world: conflict, pandemic, disease, economic disruption, environmental collapse. There's so many forces at work, and yet how do they come together? What do they represent as a whole? And how should we be responding to this? This is why the New Message from God is here, to help us answer those questions. So I feel that the New Message can help you and all people in ways big and small, in the most intimate details of life, and all the way up to the biggest world and geopolitical events unfurling in front of us today. So please take in the New Message on your time. Today we're going to be listening to a revelation received by Marshall Vian Summers in a state of connection to the angelic presence. This revelation is called The Battleground, and it is part of the book of the New Message called The New World. And to begin, I'd like to share 3 passages with you which speak to what exactly this battleground is. I'm going to read these to you. You are standing on the battleground right now. An economic battleground, a political battleground, a military battleground, a battleground even within yourself over what you will follow and what you will stand for at a time of great uncertainty and upheaval in the world. You are standing on the battleground. It is here you will either build a new and more equitable and united future for the human family, or you will destroy yourselves, group by group, nation by nation, only to be exploited by those from beyond who will seek to use and direct you in your state of weakness, failure, and decline. So what will prevail? Wisdom, dignity, and common sense? Or anger, resentment, and revenge? This is the great battleground, not over territory, but over what will prevail in the minds and hearts of people. These words come from the Creator of all life, and I feel them as I read them. They carry a lot of weight. And they bring home the truth that the battleground is not just at the edge or the fringes of Europe or in sub-Saharan Africa or in the South Asian Sea, South China Sea, or in some far-flung place. It's right here. It's right now. It's in our own neighborhood, our own community. And it could be said that it is even within us, because what is within us, our thoughts, our emotions, end up manifesting eventually and inevitably in the manifest world. And so when we see physical war, we should be sure that that does stem from, in some way, a state of conflict that exists within the individual. Many, hundreds of millions of individuals, of which we are a few. And so the battleground is here, it's under our feet, and therefore our ability to make a difference, to resolve this battleground, is right within grasp. It's right there in front of us to take the right stance, make the right choices, and choose the right direction personally, but then also for our family, our community, and everyone else we influence out in the world. So we're going to listen and read the Battleground. The original spoken revelation will be played for you now. I'd like to invite you, if any questions or comments come up for you you'd like to share with me. I'll be taking a few questions at the end. We will listen to this revelation, and then I'll take some questions, and I'll share with you some next steps we can take in light of this. So with that, let's listen and read the Battleground.
You must speak out against war. It is never justified. It is errors compounded. It is failure compounded. The incentive to go to war over resources, territorial control, overcoming a perceived enemy will be so great in the future. When the resources of the world will diminish, and economic difficulties will arise, here, there, and everywhere, will be a great trial for humanity. It is a challenge because humanity must become united in the face of the universe, a greater community of intelligent life. It must become united to utilize the resources of the world sufficiently and successfully to avoid ongoing competition, conflict, and war. It will be a great trial for humanity. People will feel threatened. They will take sides. They will believe others who take sides. When people are governed by fear, they take sides. When people are governed by anger or resentment, they take sides, blindly, foolishly. They will be told who the enemy is, and they will believe what they are told. It will be a great trial for humanity. A trial is a test, as well as a proving ground for what is true, and what is just, and what is honor. There will either be cooperation, or there will be conflict and war. The choices become much more simple and direct here. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot overcome another and establish the peace at the same time. You cannot suppress another people, or even the people of your own nation, and think you are maintaining justice, order, and peace, for you are merely denying and resisting that which must come forward. But what must come forward is not simply a revenge or hostility or the settling of scores. It must be guided by a greater power within people, the power that God has put there for all the peoples of the world, for all the religions of the world, even for those who have no religion. It is there. This power will see beyond division and see beyond complexity, and will see beyond the settling of scores to establish a cooperating reality based upon necessity and not merely high ideals, based upon the fundamental needs of people, and what can assure that those needs will be sufficiently met. God's new revelation speaks of this greater power in the individual, speaks of it with such great emphasis, for it is the most important thing. Without this, you will be governed by fear and desire and the persuasions of others. You will side with your group, with your tribe, with your culture, maybe even your nation, or some force or faction within your nation, and you will be blinded by their ideology, and you will believe because you will be so frightened that you will want to believe in something that you can adhere to, and you will not want to be alone, and so you will associate with those who seem to be powerful and determined. Thus whole nations are corralled into war. Thus people are cast into opposing forces, not even understanding what the conflicts are really about, not really understanding what they are doing and what they are supporting. Radical forces, radical voices will gain the world's attention, as has been the case, because that is what people want to listen to. They don't want moderation. They don't want restraint. They don't want diplomacy. They want to take what they think is theirs, or prevent someone else from taking what they think is theirs, or getting what's left as the world diminishes and declines. It is such a desperate situation in a world where humanity is so fractured and so divided. You all must overcome this, you see, but you have to begin with yourself, for you are fractured and divided internally. You are given to radical persuasion. You tend to avoid that which you cannot face, or try to put simple solutions on circumstances that are really more difficult to comprehend and to understand. Look at your own tendencies. Look where your mind goes, facing grave uncertainty and the prospect of war and conflict. Look how you take sides automatically, or assume beliefs without ever really thinking and taking the time to understand the situations more deeply, more thoroughly, which would give you pause and restrain you from coming to premature conclusions. God has given you the great power to see, to know, and to act with certainty. But to follow this, you have to step away from all the other seductions and directives and tendencies of the mind. And people will not do this. They will fall into ranks. They will become partisans in a splintering and disintegrating situation. The battle lines are being drawn. Nations are vying for positions of control. Many who lead these nations understand the great change that is coming to the world. They want to have as strong a position as possible, to control access to resources as much as possible, to assure their security as much as possible. And so they will vie for control and compete with others for control. But none of them understand the greater threat in the world. The threat of intervention from beyond the world, who seek to use human conflict, human ignorance, human ambition to its own ends. The great understanding that humanity must have is not being adopted sufficiently. So God has given a new message for the world, a message of warning, a message of power, a message of grace, a message of great hope. But this great hope can only be fulfilled if a sufficient number of people can receive the revelation. Many parts of the world are facing the restrictions in food and water. For nature has been violated as the world, natural balance has been upset. Now the whole world will be facing violent weather, destroying much of the world's food production it will, and with it the stability of nations, particularly the poorer nations of the world. While the strongest nations vie for position, struggling with each other, using poorer nations as their battleground, the poorer nations of the world will suffer in decline. And how much war will be waged, and how many lives will be ruined and lost, how much land will be destroyed, how many cities will be devastated, how much tragedy will have to occur before enough people come to their senses and realize their problem is not with one another, their problem is with the world. There's stability in the world itself. There's stability within a greater community of life in which humanity has always lived and with which it must now learn to contend. And who will guide humanity, and what can God offer to humanity under such a grave and critical situation? The waste to the world of things that cannot be wasted, of land and infrastructure, of people and talents and abilities. Nothing can be wasted in this new world, this world of greater demands, this world that will require human unity and cooperation at a level never seen before. Not because everyone agrees ideologically, but because of sheer necessity itself. And because humanity is facing adversity and intervention from the universe around it, functioning surreptitiously in the world, using the powers of deception and persuasion, casting nation against nation and people against people, discouraging entire populations so they will lose faith in their leaders and seek to be guided and governed by powers they do not understand. This is the battleground. You either ruin what you have left and cast humanity into a much more grave and dire set of circumstances in the future, or people begin to come to their senses to realize that everything is at stake. No nation will prevail if the world declines too far, if too much is lost. No one's affluence will be safe and secure in a situation like this. So what will prevail? Wisdom, dignity, and common sense, or anger, resentment, and revenge? This is the great battleground, not over territory, but over what will prevail in the minds and hearts of people. And how many will have to die and suffer and be cruelly crippled before humanity can see what it must choose and commit itself to this path of resolution. The religions of the world are divided and contentious even within themselves. Too often they have become partisans in the great struggles for power and dominance that have been waged throughout time, history. What is the guiding light there? Not everyone will become a Christian. Not everyone will become a Muslim. Not everyone can become a Jew. Not everyone can follow any faith, tradition, or ideology. And yet many seek to dominate the world with their views and their religion. They too are sowing the seeds of war and conflict and mindless destruction upon the world. That is why God has spoken again, not to condemn them, but to offer a new way. It does not require a strict ideology. It does not require that you repudiate another or another's group or nation. It does not require that you believe in one hero. You are standing on the battleground. It is here you will either build a new and more equitable and united future for the human family, or you will destroy yourself, group by group, nation by nation, only to be exploited by those from beyond, who seek to use you and to direct you in your state of weakness, failure, and decline. If you knew the great hazards facing humanity, war would stop tomorrow. It would simply not be an option. If you knew what humanity will have to deal with and face, there would be little contention between nations. This is the great trial, you see. Can humanity emerge from this great threshold intact, with a greater resolution and unity and strength, or will it simply disintegrate and destroy itself in the face of what it has created in a world that has been exploited, wasting its precious resources on conflict, wasting its opportunity to establish a greater union here on earth? And what kind of union will that be? Will that be a free union, or will that be an oppressed state? The universe is full of technological oppressed states. Whatever the union is, you will have to have a union to survive in the greater community. You cannot be a set of warring tribes. You cannot be destroying the wealth and splendor and resources of the world over your ridiculous issues with one another. For pride, arrogance, power, or advantage, you will destroy what is left. And then you will face a set of circumstances the human family as a whole has never had to face before. How to survive in a decimated world. How to survive in a climate that is out of control. A climate that has lost its natural stability because of human pollution and abuse. It will take everything you have, your science, your ingenuity, your technology, human willpower, just to survive in this world. And your ability to do so will be determined what happens on this battleground and what this trial produces. It is easy to go to war. It is more difficult to establish a union. It is easy to fall apart because that is what people do when they are weak and confused. It is more difficult to stand firm and maintain your strength and determination in times of change and uncertainty. It is easy to attack another. It is more difficult to establish an agreement between you that is mutually supportive. take the easy way, and you will face hardships that have never been known to the human family as a whole. And the world your children will have to live in, and their children, will be far more difficult and dangerous than what you face today. They will bless you or curse you for what you have done in these times. There's one great opportunity in this era to establish a greater unity and to prepare for a new world in reality, and to prepare for a greater community of intelligent life in the universe. This time of revelation when God has spoken again to all the peoples of the world, to all the nations and all the religions of the world, to give them this greater perspective and this greater power and this greater opportunity that will be utterly wasted if humanity continues in its destructive and ignorant ways. People of the world, hear the voice of heaven. And those who would wage war, particularly the religious who claim to be religious, heaven will not look upon you favorably. For you're leading humanity into travail and far greater danger and difficulty. What will prevail? Human strength and wisdom, or human weakness and indolence? What will prevail? What must be built carefully over time, or what is expedient at the moment? What will prevail in you? You can always blame others, speak about humanity, generalities, but what about you? Where will your mind go? What position will you take? What will you support? You cannot merely look out for yourself, for that is destructive. You must consider how everyone can have greater stability and encouragement. This is a challenge not only for leaders of nations or great thinkers or philosophers or theologians, it is a challenge for each person who sees that they must really consider what is happening in the world and what they can do to contribute to a positive and constructive outcome. For like it or not, believe it or not, you are standing on the battleground right now. An economic battleground, a political battleground, a military battleground, a battleground even within yourself over what you will follow and what you will stand for at a time of greater uncertainty and upheaval in the world. God has spoken again to all the peoples of the world to give them strength, courage, and dignity, and a pathway out of confusion, danger, and self-destruction. But who will listen to this and not merely defend their old ideas or their position or speak for their own group or protect their self-interest? Those who have taken sides and those who will take sides, can you hear God speaking to you again? Admonishing you, correcting you, honoring you, and directing you. In the next 20 years, if the great remaining resources are squandered, the world will be poor. Poorer than you can imagine. Humanity may survive, but in a very much declined state. It is not a world where anyone will really benefit. Even those few who have wealth will be surrounded by those who do not. Their position will not be sustainable. This is the seriousness of these times. This is the importance of your life. You did not merely come here to be a locust upon the land and consume everything in sight, as the wealthy do so often. came here to give something unique and special to the world in need. Do not complain about the world, for this is the world that will offer you redemption, if you can understand it and respond to it correctly. Do not condemn yourself, for you know not of your greater purpose, your greater origin, and your greater destiny. Each one of you is important. Each one of you has gifts for the world. Gifts that you cannot ascertain from your own desires and preferences, but what must be called out of you by the circumstances of the world. Often by circumstances you might choose to avoid or have avoided in the past. This is what brings greatness out of people, not their pathetic little wishes and obsessions and fantasies. You are standing on the battleground, determining the future and the fate of humanity. Each one of you and all of you will contribute to this in one way or the other. There is no neutral ground. You cannot stand apart and think of yourself as above and beyond all this, for this is the world you have come to serve. And knowledge, the greater power that God has given you, is determined and focused on you finding this service and fulfilling it here. It is okay that things are not perfect. Stop complaining about this. When people are endangered, they do the greatest things. When there is the greatest need, the greatest creations are made. When the greatest needs prevail, the greatest inventions come forward. You are not made great by pleasure and indolence, but by contribution and selfless giving of yourself and life and resources. Do not think your belief in the great Savior is going to save you unless you can give to the world what you came to give. Do not think that your religious ideology is going to set you above and beyond everyone else. For if you cannot contribute to human unity and cooperation with peoples from different nations and religions, then you are working against the welfare and well-being of humanity, no matter what you believe or what your hero or heroine might be. Heaven looks upon those who can contribute to human unity, cooperation, and adaptation to a new world and to a greater community of life. For your isolation in the universe is over, and you will never have it again. The time has come for humanity to continue with this, and there is no running away from this reality. It is what is necessary that is important. It is what must be that is important. It is courage, purpose, and destiny which are important. Do not think your intellectual position is significant. It is only what you give and do not give, and what you support and do not support, that makes any difference to the outcome for your life and destiny, and for the well-being of the world. Here there must be great humility and great service, or you will not understand why you are here, what you must do, and what the world is calling from you and requiring of you. You are on the battleground. There is no hiding. There is no running away. There is no living in fantasy. There is no thinking that you are special and unique because of anything. Your world is declining. Humanity is sowing the seeds of future conflict. War is raging here, there, and everywhere. Climate is unstable. Economies are contracting. You must participate in this greater reality and serve wherever your true service can be earned. In this you will know heaven, and heaven will know you, regardless of your religious beliefs. For you are at the dawning of a new era of human unity and cooperation, or a new era of human self-destruction. The outcome will be determined upon the battleground upon which you stand today.
Quite a message, and quite powerfully relevant to what we are looking at in our world right now. I'd like to go back to that last statement at the very end of that revelation, last two sentences. For you are at the dawning of a new era of human unity and cooperation, or a new era of human self-destruction. The outcome will be determined upon the battleground upon which you stand today. I think it's really important here to stop and spend a moment looking at this vision that the new message from God has for our world, this positive vision of the dawning of a new era of human unity and cooperation. This is where we're trying to get to. This is a future. I could paint a vision for you briefly based on what I know from the new message. This is a future in which our environment, nature on Earth, has stabilized sufficient that we are going to survive on planet Earth sustainably for millennia. We are on a sustainable path of survival on planet Earth. The nations of the world still exist, but their cooperation and unity is so significant that some form of world governance can come into being that can look over the affairs of the whole world and direct the whole world for human survival across the planet. And it is a world in which we are starting to make contact with other forms of intelligent life in the universe. And so we have eclipsed our isolation. We're part of a larger, greater community in the cosmos. And so it's not just about us interacting as nations, religions, cultures. We are one human family interacting with a community of intelligent life beyond our world. And as the human race, given our unique journey, our unique spiritual traditions, ancient wisdom, we have much to offer that greater community that these other forms of intelligent life need, that they could receive. This is part of the vision that the new message from God has for our world. That's where we're trying to go. The problem is that the opportunities to prepare for that, to adjust, to get onto that road, to get to that destination, are diminishing and diminishing to the point of almost not being there anymore. And so our options are narrowing so significantly that this revelation says we essentially have two options at this point in history. There are two choices to make, the choice being cooperation or conflict. And there are two paths to take. And I'll read you this passage on what these two paths are, although I think you just heard it in spades just now. Humanity can emerge from this great threshold intact, with a greater resolution, unity, and strength, or it will simply disintegrate and destroy itself in the face of what it has created in a world that has been exploited, wasting its precious resources on conflict, wasting its opportunity to establish a greater union here on Earth. So, two choices, cooperation or conflict, two paths to take. One in the direction of unity, strength, and resolution, the other in the direction of disintegration and collapse. We are right up against it now. I really felt that a few days ago, watching the constant bombardment of these modern European cities in Ukraine, thinking to myself, wow, as every bomb and missile hits a building, that was someone's life, literally their life. They literally just died. Or they didn't die, but that was their life, their home, their savings, everything they've saved up for, their stability, their platform for giving their contribution in the world, gone like that. And then think of the infrastructure, the building itself. It's expensive to build a building in today's world of high inflation and supply chain disruption. Building, creating, constructing is expensive and more challenging than ever. And here, cities are being leveled. Infrastructure is being wiped out. Who will rebuild that? who will pay to rebuild that? Will anyone pay to rebuild that? We're right up against it now. It's not like we have, a cornucopia of resources to tap and lots of free cash flying around and easy and inexpensive labor. That's not the world we're in. It's not 1990. It's 2022. It's 2022. And here we're seeing a 19th century war unfold in our present millennium and century and decade and year. It's unbelievable. And so I really do feel what this revelation says, that we are right up against it now. It is decision time. And so which way will we go? And I also really appreciate that this revelation brings it home to us individually, because, what can I, Reed Summers, do to turn the tables or tip the balance or stop this war from happening? Very, very little. But what can I do is actually very, very much through the vehicle of my life. What I say, who I impact, my actions and words and doings in the world, and everyone who will ultimately know me in some way and who I could beneficially assist or impact. And the same is for you. We are people, individuals all around the world with hundreds and hundreds of touch points out there, relationships that we have, where we could impart something, give something deeper and greater from what the new message calls knowledge, the spiritual mind within us. And so, again and again, the new message from God brings it home. The biggest world event brings it home. It says the world is fractured and divided, and yet we must start with ourselves because we are fractured and divided. And imagine healing enough that fracture line within, that division within. That's itself a force, a message that the world needs. And imagine 100 people or 1,000 people or 50,000 people can do that. Now all their relationships definitely don't reflect fracture and division. They reflect something else. So this is the promise of the new message from God and its major attempt to reach individuals in the world who can respond at this deeper level, undergo this deeper preparation, and give something deeper and greater underneath the lines of conflict and dissonance, all the thinking that creates them, underneath all of that at a deeper level to touch humanity in some way. This is the power of a new message from God. And this new message makes very clear, and I also think this is important as well, that there's no neutral ground. It says you are standing on the battleground, determining the fate and the future of humanity. Each one of you and all of you will contribute to this in one way or the other. There is no neutral ground. So it's always good if you're being given a great opportunity in life, that life also kind of takes away the out, the little back door you can slip out and just kind of, not participate. It's like, no, you're in the game. You're in the game. You're on the team. And so here we are, no neutral ground. So in a way, everything we say and do is adding or detracting. It's adding to the force for good, or it's adding to the force of dissonance, fracture and division in the world. And lastly, I also really appreciate how this message calls us into the thick of things. It doesn't send us off to meditate in an ashram or a monastery or some religious center or building for a decade or 3 decades. It does call us to prepare on the inside, and that can be a period of retreat needed from life in order to gain a different sort of footing within ourselves. But on a broad level, the new message is about sending us in. It's about getting to the battle lines on the battleground. And I was thinking today how moving it is when you see someone reach across the picket line on a battle line. It could be a battle in a family, a community, a major social issue. Reach across that line, shake hands with someone, and have a human moment with the other side, the others, the enemy, right? Recognize them and let go of who that person thinks they are. Let go of the conflict and engage in a human interaction where there is some degree of forgiveness being acted out, meaning made real. And it's so moving when you see this. And I was thinking of one moment at a Black Lives rally. This was a couple years ago, I think. And there were 2 competing large groups of people, and it was very testy, almost violent. And there was a group of white supremacists, I believe, and an audience of Black Lives Matter supporters on the other side. And this man from the Black Lives Matter side walks right through this thick mass of people who are screaming, yelling, profane, defaming one another, goes right up to another guy, a white guy on the other side of a literal fence. The police were standing back, but they were there. And he said, "Why do you hate me, bro? Why do you hate me? What is it about me? Is my skin color that bad?" I'm paraphrasing. I don't know exactly what he said. And this other man had this moment where it's almost like the armor and the helmet and the sword and the shield just melted right off and away from him, and he became himself again. And they had this amazing human moment at the center of this roiling mass of near violent conflict. And it was powerful and viral, of course, right? It went around the world, impacted millions of people. And so, to me, that's a sign about the importance of being in the thick of it, not retreating from it, not trying to escape from the conflicts of the world, to escape from the cities of the world, from the coastlines of the world, out of a desire to protect ourselves, but to be called back in and to be moved by something deeper, not just to settle scores and act revenge, all of these major flags this revelation called out, but to be authentically moved at the level of knowledge. If that can happen 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times, there's certainly 10,000 opportunities for it probably every day in a single country. And there's 170 plus countries. So there are probably hundreds of millions of opportunities a year for a moment like that to occur, even at the very heart and center of a conflict. And so I'm heartened. I'm heartened that the new message from God is calling us in. I'm heartened that it's making the battleground a matter of personal importance for us, meaning it's right in front of us, it's even within us, it's not on the other side of the world alone. And I'm grateful that the new message is giving us a vision of what we're reaching for. What are we going after at this point in the game? It's so late in the game for our human race and for our planet. Are we just repairing? Are we just, limping into harbor, plugging the gaps, plugging the holes, keeping the water out? No, we're actually meant to sail this vessel, planet Earth, lifeboat Earth, somewhere new into the universe of intelligent life in which we live. Big vision, well worth sacrifice, well worth struggle, well worth the inner work needed that the new message is calling us to. And so I'm heartened by all of that, even as we face the battleground and find ourselves firmly within it today. So I'd like to share, as I close up here, a couple passages from this revelation that are important also to keep in mind, because they point to the great good that can come about maybe only because of the battleground. When people are in danger, they do the greatest things. When there is the greatest need, the greatest creations are made. When the greatest needs prevail, the greatest inventions come forward. You are not made great by pleasure and indolence, but by contribution and selfless giving of yourself and life and resources. Each one of you is important. Each one of you has gifts for the world. Gifts that you cannot ascertain from your own desires and preferences, but what must be called out of you by the circumstances of the world. Often by circumstances you might choose to avoid or have avoided in the past. This is what brings greatness out of people. So, yes, the times are dire. Yes, the tragedy is enormous and at times overwhelming, but the opportunity grows all the brighter, even though the chances grow slimmer. And so I hope that wakens something in your heart to reach for the opportunity, even as the chances grow slimmer, and not sign off on the opportunity, not give up on life. So with that, I'd like to turn and see if there are any questions for me or comments that anyone would like to make. So please feel free to use the chat. on YouTube or the comment section on Facebook, and my team will forward it to me. While you're thinking, I'll share a little story that came to mind the other day as I was looking at bombs fall on beautiful city streets lined with old European chestnut trees and, you know, moms and pops in their shops and kids running around. Had a chance to visit Georgia, the country Georgia, in 2008 with a friend, good friend of mine. And I remember walking down the central avenue of a small city called Gori, city in Georgia, west of Tbilisi. And just, it's one of those moments where you're walking in a place and it's normal in its own way. It's not my normal, but it's normal for Georgia. And yet you feel something. You feel something coming for this place. Something's not right. Not just between people today, you know, all the stuff that happens in the world, the terrible things. Something's coming, and and you feel it. It's like a force. It's like, it reminds me of the passage from the New Message that the future is influencing the present, which is very different from what we're told, which is that no, we create things now, and that creates the future we want. The future is ours. We make it from what we want now and do now. Well, the New Message says something different. At a higher level, the future is influencing the present. The future is calling to you now to do something for the making of that future. It's very mysterious, very interesting. Well, about 9 months later, I saw that exact same street. In fact, the exact same building that my friend and I, fellow member of the society, were standing in front of. And it was strewn with bullets. There was one dead journalist, a Dutch journalist, on the ground, and several others injured. And that was the war, the beginning of the war, the first strike in the war with Georgia, between Russia and Georgia. And it's such an ominous thing when you see a place you were standing on obliterated. And so I think of Ukraine now. I think of all those neighborhoods that were so normal, so just home, safe, familiar a month ago, and they are gone now. And I don't know if they'll come back. But it is a stark reminder of how things can change. And it's not just it'll change out there, it could happen close to home too. I have a question from Ken here. What would you suggest as a first step after viewing this video? It's a great question, Ken. Depends on who you are. Depends on if this is literally your first discovery of the new message, or if you've been here for 5-10 years, or if you've been studying the new message for 30 years, as some of us have. I'm going to assume this is a question more about the person who's just finding this. I think what's really important is to gain a vision of the present and real world around you. We're all so insulated, especially in the West, and I don't want to assume that's where you are. We're all over the world. But for those of us who live in safe parts of the world and affluent parts of the world, we're so insulated by that. And so the world we perceive, we start to think is the world that is, and it is not. It patently is not. My time in 35 plus countries have given me, if anything, the gift of knowing what is actually happening out there right now tonight as I'm talking to you. It's not what I see on my street or downtown in the town I live. And so getting a real picture, a real vision of the world is really important. And I think the new message is a huge part of gaining that. It's not the only part. There's a lot to look into if you haven't been looking into things. But the new message gives some essential keys that I don't think could come from anywhere else. They would have to come from a higher power to reveal to you what literally you could not see. And so a huge part of that is obviously contact with intelligent life in the universe, which is underway. Another part of it is the scale of the environmental crisis facing our planet, which is not something you might believe based on what you see, but is true. And so gaining that first picture, I think, is really important. And I think centering in your own life is super important within that, to not become an ideologue or an activist or a champion even for planet Earth, yet, until you undergo some degree of self-reflection and centering on your own life. And that means taking into account your work, your relationships, your health. How are you really doing? Where are you relative to where you need to get to in life based on what you know? That's your that's that's your playing field. Okay, there's a bigger playing field, the playing field of life itself, but you need your own personal playing field where you're playing ball with your life, making real progress. And so before we try to become an activist on the grand field of life, I think it's really important to center on our own lives. The truth is, we have a certain nature and design. We have a certain place we need to get in life. There are people we need to meet. There is a purpose for us, and knowledge will reveal it. And so staying within that framework is what's going to yield progress, improvement, a new life, and an actual contribution. Instead of staying in the old life, totally disembodied from how we are, where we are, how we're doing, but thinking in grand ways, thinking about big missions to save the world and big issues and big topics. That's armchair spirituality. That's you're not traveling. You're reading a book in your armchair at home. So if you want to travel, I think centering in your life is really important. And of course, there's more. And I appreciate that question, Ken. And maybe there's others watching who have a tip or something to share, or a link as well. Steps to Knowledge, the Book of Inner Knowing, a book of spiritual practice could be a great way to center in time. Question from Al. What can we do to further strengthen and embolden the courage that's necessary to face these great waves of change? Great question. I know for me, there's nothing like taking real action to show myself that I can take real action. So strength and courage often come from taking steps in life that require your strength and courage. You can't just read it in a book or some loving person or author or presence tells you you're strong and courageous. You're powerful. See it, receive it, just receive it now. I don't think that's how it gets into our deepest body and brain and nervous system. It's got to be something a lot more visceral and manifested than that. And so there's nothing like taking an action in life that you've known you need to take, but haven't, but now do. And that takes strength and courage. And in doing so, I think that would give you more strength and courage than anything I could offer or say. And so there's real work to do. I mean, if you want to get strong, like take the analogy of the gym, physically, you got to go to the gym like 3 times a week. If you go to the gym once every 6 months and someone tells you you could be strong, that's going to cause some cognitive dissonance, I think. So, but it's a great question, Al, and this is what we need to do. We need to get stronger and more emboldened with courage, and the opportunity is right there. It may not be taking on something in the world. It may be taking on something in our life. A question: how do you see the 20 years mentioned in the Revelation? What does it say about us today? And I will read that passage to you if I can find it. Here it is. In the next 20 years, if the great remaining resources are squandered, the world will be poor, poorer than you can imagine. Humanity may survive, but in a very much declined state. And it is not a world where anyone really benefits. Even those few who have wealth will be surrounded by those who do not, and their position will not be sustainable. This is one of the prophetic warnings in the new message, which does offer a time period for us to consider. This revelation was given 9 years ago, so we're roughly halfway through this 20-year statement. The way I take it is it's late in the game, but the game's not over. The opportunity is glowing brighter, even if the chances are slimmer. We have the time to do what we need to do. I was even telling myself that today. I was working on a project and I was rather stressed about it. And I said, I have enough time to do what I need to do here and to do it right. which is a great mantra, by the way, if you're inside of a busy, hectic, overbooked life. It's taking a breath and saying, I have all the time in the world I need to make this shot. And you'll make the shot. And so I read this statement not as to say we're halfway through our opportunity or it's too late. I don't know. I don't know. Good things are happening in the world of renewables, and bad things are happening in the world of war, conflict, and the destruction of infrastructure. So it's hard to know where we are, and I wouldn't try to divine that myself. But I think the new message is telling us that it's getting late. You have time to do this, but you have only enough time to do this. And the choices are becoming far simpler, far more binary now than maybe a decade or 2 decades ago. And the opportunity is still there. But take that all in. What does that mean? That means your life matters. Your choices, your energy, what you do with your time and everything matters so much. Who we can reach, who the new message can reach matters. So everything is starting to matter more. Interesting segue, because the revelation I'll be sharing with you for the first time, first release 2 weeks from now, is called What Really Matters. So perhaps it's the perfect next revelation from this one. Great questions. I'll take one more. It's just over the top of the hour here. John asks, can war be won on a battlefield? It's a good question. Kind of depends on the nature of the war. There are many different wars going on right now. There's cyber wars, psychological wars, culture wars, physical wars, wars of armies. Can it be won on a battlefield? I don't believe it can. Obviously, any conflict for resolution, I think the resolution has to find a deeper footing than the nature of that conflict itself. We saw that in Northern Ireland, the Good Friday Agreement. It's not just, well, you killed 1,000 of us and we killed 1,001 of you, so let's kill one more of them and then we're equal, right? There's no resolution at the level at which the violation has occurred. So something deeper, some greater sense, some sense of the other's humanity and their needs, and some compromise to meet those has to be found, I feel. Some wars, or conflicts, I should say, can be resolved by a secondary conflict that gets created as a result of the first conflict. When a despotic leader goes to war without the will of his people, that may be his undoing, and that might be another fight that has to be fought. And maybe there's the resolution. It's hard to say. But I think when full-on conflict like this erupts in the world, it unleashes things that have been in the closet of humanity for a long time. There's a lot in our closet, our collective closet, a lot in the shadows of our psyches as a human race, a lot of grievance, a lot of trauma enacted upon one another. And so what will get that out of the closet and process it? Conflict could be a part of that. I kind of sense it would be. And the new message does counsel us to not demand peace at a time of positive change, because positive change brings conflict. Why does it bring conflict? I think it's because we get settled into our state of dissonance and we normalize that, we acclimate to it. And so we feel, in a sense, stable and okay, but really we're sitting on a giant mountain of trash, essentially. And we need to get off that mountain of trash. And yet there's a lot of value in there too. There's a lot of history. And so in a sense, you have to go through the trash to get off the mountain of trash. So some conflict will be necessary even to make positive change in the world. There was a question last week that I didn't have time to answer that I've been thinking about, which is, I can't find the actual question or questioner, but I'll paraphrase it. It's something like, in what cases is violence justified? When can we use violence in defense? I think it was in the context of defense. And I will read this passage to you. This is from a revelation from 2006, unpublished, first time any of us are hearing this. The only time that violent behavior is appropriate is in defense of the innocent. But this must be carefully understood, for it is so easily misunderstood. To protect the weak and the innocent against a brutal force or oppression or the risk of death, then violent resistance is appropriate. But it can have no political motivations or religious ideology behind it. It must merely be to protect the innocent. I think that's important to call out because there is a violent defense going on right now. It absolutely is in defense of the innocent. That was made clear in the last 7 days based on the nature of the attack. And if I broaden this statement from violent defense to just defense, I think that's important as well, because defense is very important in life. I don't want to encourage anyone to just go into life as an all-trusting, all-loving pacifist who just takes hits and punches and asks for more. I mean, that's pathological, right? That's destructive, assuming that you matter, which you do. So to take hits and punches as someone who matters is absolutely not okay. And defense is important in life. It is occasionally important to be formidable in your defense of yourself or another in life. I do think, however, it's important to treat the defense at the level at which the attack occurred. You know, this isn't like a narcissistic personal injury where if someone insults you, you can punch them in the face, right? That's defense not at the level at which the attack occurred. But what we're seeing in Europe is defense at the level at which the attack is occurring. And unfortunately, it is manifesting as extremely violent on both sides, and that is unfortunate. But these are the lines. These are the lines we will have to walk, regarding what is justified, what is not. And it's not always going to be cut and dry in black and white. Excellent. Well, thank you so much all for being here. Our next broadcast will be in 2 weeks. I'll be sharing with you the newest revelation to be released by Marshall V. Summers, entitled What Really Matters. So once again, on a Monday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, I'll see you then. And so many revelations are available, and perhaps we can put links in the chat, and you can read more. The Battleground is just the beginning. There's so much more to widen and broaden your comprehension, how you see yourself within this world, how you're living within this world and moving in your own life. So much more to take in. So this is just one little block, one little brick in the wall, so to speak. And there are many, many more. So if you're just finding the new message, I encourage you to get into the library of texts. They're all free online. They're in over 20 languages, and see how this message strikes you and where it takes you. So thank you for being here with me. Marshall, my father, appreciates you being here as well. I know he's here with me. And we say good night to you, or good morning, or good afternoon, and we will see you down the road at our next broadcast. Thank you all.